So when you see regulation, such as the one in Europe where you've said 70% of the waste materials need to be reused, when you see regulations like that implemented, the implications are profound. It creates an entire new ecosystem. Suddenly now you have to think about where data comes from. You have to think about how the materials are classified and then how the materials are procured or how they're stored and how they're bought. This is surely an opportunity for many startups to emerge, and sometimes regulation can achieve that. Who would think that creativity isn't sometimes the result of the private industry? It can be the result of the government creating a constraint and companies being flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, absolutely that. So yeah, it's not the regular route to building a startup, I guess, but in my case it is. So I just saw an opportunity, and I believe this is the right time and the right place to do it, because this is Scandinavia, plus we have the regulation and the local restrictions as well. And honestly, at this point, there is no direct competition, at least in our case. So for that reason, I see a lot of potential for new startups to come into the space and build marketplaces on top of the data that we own and create, new solutions, because we have the data, which has not been easy to accumulate because it's super fragmented. Along, like each municipality has a different way of storing this data, and we've kind of uncracked how to access the data. And for that reason, I believe that this is the right time of building this new industry of reusables, and there is so many players that can come on board and that should come on board.
So you're dependent in some ways on other startups doing something with the data that you're providing and empowering other startups to be successful in their business, sort of like a pure platform in that sense.
We're not dependent on startups. No, I would not say that, because our data is needed by municipalities themselves, by property developers because of the new regulations, as I mentioned. And then we have demolishers, we have recyclers, we have data houses that purely work that generate revenue by selling data. Nobody has this data at this point. So that is essentially who we are. We're a data house that holds information that no other data house has.
So let's play this back then. You have made this data accessible. So then what happens next? Now that they know that there's a specific quantity of reusables like wood, concrete, metal, brick, or whatever it may be, right, coming out, what happens next then? Do they have to go and send a truck to the demolition site to pick it up? Is that literally how it's going to work in the beginning? Or is this more of a case of, okay, there's gold there, literally, in terms of, there's a lot of things we can do with this, but we can't access it?
What do you mean by can't access it?
Well, this is a demolition site. How could you explain how is a company going to go to the demolition site and just start, as the building is knocked down, right? Let's say someone takes a dynamite and the building, is knocked down in whatever way it's done, right, with a bulldozer or whatever. You've got all this material here. It would typically just be, would it be sorted usually, or would it be just put onto a truck and go straight to the landfill? How does it work right now?
Well, absolutely, it's sorted. It depends who's involved in the demolition. So normally the recyclers come and they store whatever they find valuable, which is normally the metals. And then in some cases, they also take and recycle the concrete for roads. That's the normal scenario, how it happens. So, but what we're doing is giving this data of where and what is coming out of the building so that property developers and municipalities and city planners can also access this data, get in touch with the property developers ahead of time, so before the building has been taken down, and kind of discuss the buy and sell relationship, who needs what and how are they going to reuse the materials, instead of just selling a minor part of the entire waste and the rest just being dumped in the landfill.
Right. So that's where the power really is. You're enabling communication, you're facilitating the buy sell. And that's done obviously in a manual way, or traditional phone calls or whatever. And that's where the opportunity might be for other startups. If they can use your data, they might facilitate the buying and selling process. What about the storage? Is there an opportunity there? We've seen, for example, globally, especially in the US, especially with giants like Amazon, gobbling up land, building warehouses, and storage facilities are at an all-time high. You know, there's a trend now where people are going sort of to more minimalist ways of living and shedding possessions and just storing them. And it's such a big business in real estate to own a self-storage facility. I'm an LP or part owner in some storage facilities myself. I see how they're performing. What's the implication for storage? Because what happens if you're a building owner and you're not able to get rid of all the materials? Does it go back to the default? Are you supposed to go back and just whatever you couldn't sell or sell to anyone else, you just throw it away at the landfill? Or are these materials going to be stored somewhere?
Well, it really depends. Right now, most of it goes to the landfill, but I would like to see most of it not even being stored, but being reused real time. So hence why we're building this. So I'm sorry, Zain, but we're kind of trying to get rid of the storage facility here. Yeah, because like what we're doing is kind of giving information to all the stakeholders where and what is going to be taken down so that we can eliminate the storage and we can enhance reusing the materials that have just come out of a demolition site so that they can be reused in a new building quite immediately.
Wow. So that's a powerful vision, really. If this law is implemented properly, if your platform provides the value it does, it changes everything. What happens to the construction sites? And what happens more so to the places where waste is put right now, the landfill sites?
Do you want to see landfills grow? That's my question back to you.
And unfortunately, they are growing, right? Which is the problem, and it's causing damage.
That is a massive problem, and that is what we're trying to solve. I am personally all about minimalistic living. You have as much as you need, and there's no need to store stuff or materials that are not needed today and right now. So I think that we should personally and professionally aim to put everything into use. All of our materials, all of our possessions that we have, if we're not using them today, then what is the point? And why would we trash the universe by filling the landfills if we can reuse these materials? And there is a way that facilitates you finding people who want to reuse them.
So, Eva, is there an opportunity also, if this law is implemented, what really happens? Is it that landfills stay exactly as they are, which is not really acceptable because there's a hell of a lot of waste at landfills, but at least they don't grow further? Or is there also an opportunity here to get rid of what's in the landfill? Because technically what you're saying is 40% of the materials in a landfill site are construction related. And a large part of that, there's mandates to make it reusable. Is there an opportunity to go to the landfill sites themselves and to sort of categorize and reuse that? Or is that just going to stay the way it is with landfills?
Depends by the laws of the country. I know some people here in Norway who actually do that, like on a low scale, just for their own private use. They go to the landfill and they just buy a few bricks or some logs or whatever they need for their personal use. I'm not sure how scalable that is, going to the landfills and using what's already been there, because it really ruins the material quality. So if there's like wood that has been standing there for 2 years or so, like there's just so much you can do with it in terms of reusing it. So my core focus is still making sure that there's no new materials that get into the landfills, rather than focusing on what's already in the landfills.
Yeah, it sounds like once the first part of this has been accomplished, people realize what's possible. There'll be a whole host of new ideas, new startups, and new opportunities. You know, it's awesome to see also how you're making an enemy out of what is a very easy to understand problem. It's easy to rally people against the fact that these landfill sites are creating environmental damage. And it's the way of being, it's the pattern of behavior that exists in the industry that you're trying to change. And not just trying to change, you're trying to do it proactively. There's a lot of people who go out there and make a big noise about the problems, but there hasn't been a solution. And it's refreshing to see you're working on a core part of the solutions. There's no excuse. Rather than everyone getting together, complaining, which is what tends to happen, people can actually go do something about it.
You know, Zain, this always happens. You know, there's people who talk the talk and there's people who walk the walk. And I believe that everything comes down to execution. You know, as in any startup in the world, there's nothing without execution. You have to execute first. And, you know, and you have to be proactive. And this is what I'm really passionate about. And I want to see our planet that is in a recovery mode rather than, just getting worse slowly.
So how did you identify the opportunity with Material Mapper? Was it based on reading about the law, having a heads up about the law? How did you stumble into this? Because you're very well positioned and you've got this perfect tailwind here where you're the first mover, but you've got external factor like regulation pushing the industry, which is only going to help you.
Yeah, so basically it was a combination of things. So first of all, we came across the regulation that just was put in place in 2020. So that was kind of something that spiked our interest, that maybe this is where we should focus on and this is what we should do. And in addition to that, we talked to all of the major property developers in Scandinavia pretty much, including recyclers, demolishers, and consultancies. And one of the largest consultancies in Scandinavia, called Nidas, their vice president personally told me, he said, Eva, if this tool existed today, that allowed us to see what and when is going to be demolished in terms of buildings and what materials and what quantities are going to result from these buildings, we would buy it today. And so would all of the municipalities in Denmark and, in other countries. So they're the leading consultancy in Scandinavia, and they work solely with property developers and construction companies. So that was sort of the trigger that made me think, okay, maybe there's something to it. If the industry needs this, then it makes sense to put our effort and to build this.